So before I get started here, I just want to put this out there. I hope you people appreciate what I had to go through to actually watch this movie. As much as I support the idea of getting back to theaters, giving them your support in these difficult times until, of course, they shut down again because of the Delta variant, the DC film track record is so low, I could not justify paying theater movie prices for this. And so I decided to use the HBO Max I had paid for, which is easier said than done because HBO Max is an ass app. It is the assiest app I have ever seen in my life, in that my ass is a better app than HBO Max. So there is my brief review of that. Furthermore, before we get really going on this, I have to ask this question. What the fuck even is this movie? Is this a sequel? Is it a reboot? Is it a remake? I'm asking because it seems like they lifted the general plot and some of the big character beats and motivations directly from the original Suicide Squad. So are we supposed to know that the original film still happened? Did it not? Are we just supposed to pretend it didn't, like we do with so many DC films? Yeah, I just want to know so I know the context here. Okay, so that in mind, let's go ahead and get started. So as we all know, for a brief moment in history, James Gunn, director of the Guardians of the Galaxy films for Disney and Marvel, was cast out of the House of Mouse due to some insensitive tweets he had done some years before. He has since been rehired and is now back to work on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. However, in the interim, during this time when he and Disney were never ever getting back together, the competition snatched him away to try to work some of that same Guardians of the Galaxy magic on one of their properties, which had done technically well, but critically had suffered a lot of slings and arrows, some of which shot by me. If you may remember, the original Suicide Squad film was my worst movie of the year the very first year I was doing these. It beat out Batman v Superman, believe it or not. So what this does is it gives us a fresh take on an old property and also gives me carte blanche to compare a DC movie to a Marvel movie, because I am not comparing the two companies, I'm comparing the director. Comparing one piece of work to another. Yay, loopholes! So, let's talk about James Gunn take on the Suicide Squad, which, if you don't recall, is a comic book series, several series from DC, wherein supervillains are put in to basically a Black Ops task force because they're expendable, and they go on all these crazy missions and whatnot. They've been off and on in the DC comic universe for years. Most recently getting a big push because of the inclusion of DC's answer to Deadpool, Harley Quinn, which we'll talk about here in a moment. So once again, a group of misfit supervillains are tasked with going in, doing a thing, all by the shadowy Amanda Waller, played by Viola Davis. So, before I get too much into this, let me talk about the benefits of this movie. I had to watch this movie in two parts because, first of all, it was a damn slog getting through the first hour of this, I'm not going to lie. And my HBO Max cut out in the middle, and I was not that sad about it. I was like, oh, okay, good. And then had to kind of come back and rewatch the ending, which I'm glad I did, because it has, I think it's evened out my opinion of it just a little bit. So before I get into all the problems I have with this movie, let's talk about some of the things that are good and that have been improved. First of all, I think it is very clear that for the first time ever, in my opinion, the DC cinematic universe, or whatever we're supposed to call it, the extended universe, or whatever the fuck, has actually succeeded in finding a director that is fit for the material. I don't think I can say that for any film since The Dark Knight. James Gunn has proven time and time again, his quirkiness, his visual style, his aptitude for writing, that they fit this genre and this type of movie to a T, and some of his best work is on display. His best tendencies are on display here. You know, for instance, the blatant kind of bait and switch of the very beginning, where we're introduced to a character called Savant, who is played by Guardians alumni Michael Rooker, and by his introduction, I think we're meant to believe that this is the new badass leader. This is, you know, this guy is so cool, he can kill the little bouncing ball, you know, and he's introduced to the new Suicide Squad, and they're going in for a mission, and immediately they pull a Drew Barrymore, and almost the entire team is wiped out, and Savant, who is set up as this, you know, glowering badass, all, you know, up until this point, turns into a shrieking coward and tries to run away. So right away, Gunn shows us one thing, and like a good magician, poof, does something else with the other hand. So the film is filled with little touches like that of his cleverness that really help it along. There are probably one of the best moments in the film is this kind of silent dick measuring contest between our actual main character, Idris Elba as Bloodsport, and John Cena as a character called Peacemaker, as they're clearing out this camp of what they think are bad guys, and they're basically trying to outkill one another, and they're trying to one-up each other with the trickiness or skill of the kills. It's a silent moment, there's no dialogue, and it's all done through their reactions to one another and all that, and it's pretty clever. It's a pretty clever little scene. I had to admit, it was one of the moments where the film actually kind of grabbed me. I also have to say that the casting of John Cena in the Peacemaker role was a stroke of brilliance, because it's basically saying what would happen if we took his wrestling persona, the John Cena character that people have come to know from the WWE, Big Match John, and said, what if that guy was just fucking insane? You know, it's the heel turn that people have wanted Cena to do for years, and still you can totally see that this could be John Cena just with a darker edge. So I think it was good casting on that front. Also, good casting is Idris Elba. Idris Elba is always good casting. There's just something about this guy. I don't know if it's just because he's British and it's the way they train their actors, but he can walk this very fine line between completely serious, dramatic work, comedic work, goofy shit, and action hero. And in cases like this, blending all of those together. And it seems completely believable. He is always a reliable hand and a solid anchor for a movie like this. So I really appreciate him in here. And again, one of the best moments in this film, they reuse the plot motivations completely for him in this, where, you know, in the first one it was Will Smith's Deadshot. All these characters have similar names. That's another thing we'll talk about here in a second. Wanting to get back to his family and his daughter, and here Idris Elba's Bloodsport is trying to keep his daughter out of prison. So there's in the first one, they had this weird kind of father-daughter bonding between Will Smith and Harley Quinn, and in this one, they'd have a really nice scene with Idris Elba and the young girl member of the team, Ratcatcher, this girl who can control rats, which is funny because the character is afraid of rats, so there's that whole thing. That's another thing I kind of liked about this movie, or at least about the direction Gunn decided he was going to take it. The DC films have had a real style problem, in that they either have no style, they're just very generic, and I'm thinking Wonder Woman 84, Aquaman, or they have too much style, the Zack Snyder films. There's very rarely an in-between area, and James Gunn has a very distinct style with this film, and that style is he is going to take the goofiness of this general premise, the goofiness of these characters, and he is going to hang the biggest motherfucking lampshade on it that you have ever seen. He really calls it attention. I mentioned a minute ago how similar Deadshot and Bloodsport are. He hangs a lampshade on this when they introduce John Cena's Peacemaker, and the two of them have the exact same backstory. And, he's like, wait, what is this? Because so many of these characters do have, the same exact backstory. It shows just how ridiculous some of these DC villains got. Things like the Polka Dot Man or Javelin or Weasel. And these are real characters. These are not made up for the movie. These are real characters in the comics. And showing just how ridiculous not only these characters are, but how ridiculous their look is. John Cena trying to be a badass with this weird, dome thing on his head that everybody just kind of goes, okay, he's wearing a fucking dome thing on his head. And I think Gunn makes the correct decision of saying, we're not going to try to make this look good. We're going to deliberately make this look like a bunch of grown men, testosterone-filled fools wearing the worst cosplay outfits you could possibly get. And I, again, kind of just lending a feel right from the beginning that this is not something that you need to take too seriously. This is going to be goofy. It's going to be adolescent. And you should just kind of go with it. Okay? So there's a lot of good choices being made in this movie. More good choices than I would say went into just about all the DC films up to this point. Maybe Shazam. Shazam was not that bad. But this one clearly had more going on in terms of what they wanted to do visually and what Gunn wanted to do. And it helped lead to some of the more endearing moments of this film. So it sounds like I'm saying a lot of really good things about this movie, right? So then the question is, if all that's true, why didn't I enjoy this film more than I did? I admit I enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to, especially after watching the second half of it. The first half, again, was just a pain to get through. But the second half actually seemed to work. More things seemed to click. So why then did this not work for me? Well, there are a number of reasons. As I said, let's go back to the director. James Gunn is a really good director, and he's really good with this type of material. But, it seems like he did not have as many limitations on him here as maybe he did when he was working for the mouse. Now, some people say that's a good thing. Take the reins off, let a creative voice be creative, and go from there. And some directors can function like that. Some directors can function without a sounding board. They know when to pull back and they know when to push forward. And others need that bit of a guiding hand. Despite the good things that are going on in this movie, it is still a mess. It's still all over the place because if you look at some of Gunn's earlier work, even some of his video game work like Lollipop Chainsaw. Lollipop Chainsaw is a lot of fun, but it's a fucking mess. And not just, in terms of the gore, which, yes, there's a lot of blood and gore in here, which I'm 50-50 on. I didn't mind it. It was goofy, and it kind of fit the tone of the film, but it rubs me the wrong way just because I know it's there mainly so all the fanboys can literally jerk off going, this is so mature! Much like that, that reference there. So, clearly I'm above it all. But anyway, I feel like Gunn needs a little bit of a guiding hand. He needs some limitations so he can pull back on some of his more poppy kind of tendencies. One of the things that made the Guardian of the Galaxy films stand out amongst the rest of the Marvel canon is that these were two of the first of these films that anyone really could say, hey, these have more going on. These actually have unifying themes and subtext. as opposed to just kind of the standard hero's journey that a lot of the other ones were up to that point. This is not saying that that the Marvel films are bad. It's saying that they, plot-wise, theme-wise, they're fairly simplistic, which is not a bad thing, again. But the Guardians films, despite their outlandish nature, were much more grounded with unifying themes and concepts. And I think the crazier you go, the bigger you go, and the more outlandish you go, like the Guardians films and like this film, the more you need that unifying theme to act as some kind of lightning rod and give the whole thing grounding. If you want an example, look at great parody films like Airplane or the Naked Gun movies. And even though those are basically live-action cartoons, the actors in them are all playing it 100% serious. So even though there's no unifying theme or anything like that, there's a grounding there to give the exceptional things more context. And I feel that was very true with the Guardians films, and I think it's what's lacking with this film. You know, take for instance, one of the things I love about Gunn as a director is his ability to compile a really memorable soundtrack. The soundtracks from the Guardians films are classic, and I'm a sucker because I'm a kid of the 80s. I love a movie with a really good soundtrack. But even with the soundtrack of these, 70s and 80s songs, the songs were there to service the thematic point of the films. If you look at the first Guardians movie, we're led to believe that all the music that we're hearing is all stuff that's on the Walkman that Star-Lord is carrying around, which is, of course, a link to his past. It's one of the big gifts he had from his parents, and it's also one of the things he was using to try to ignore his mother dying from cancer. So even now, as an adult, we still see he's trying to ignore real responsibility, trying to ignore acceptance, and stay lost in this perpetual man-boyhood. And it even goes into the second film, where there's different music, and now we're led to believe that this music is all coming from the tape that was a gift from his mother from the end of the first Guardians movie. So now all the music there is giving him music of acceptance. He's growing up, and it even, that mother figure becomes the catalyst for him kind of breaking away from ego. So why do I bring this all up? Because once again, the Suicide Squad has great music in it, but what the fuck is it there for? It's just there, it's random. It feels like it's just random for random's sake. Which is fine, kinda, but it just adds to this general mess of Gunn just wanted to do shit and just did shit. Now, maybe there's deeper thought, meaning. I'll wait and see what Lindsay Ellis thinks. But to me, just watching it, it just felt like I'm gonna go do fucking big shit, weird things with title cards just because I fucking can. And it's not to say there's not room for that. I have no problem with movies that are just shut off your brain films. I liked the Hurricane Heist, for God's sakes. So I have no real objection to that. What I have an objection to is much like I had an objection to James Cameron's Titanic. You want to make a shitty love story on top of the Titanic and use that as a backdrop, fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. But don't act like you are creating some kind of Shakespearean masterpiece for the ages. All right? At best, this film is a little bit above average action movie, adolescent fantasy masquerading as mature entertainment. Nothing wrong with that, but there's nothing else going on. I also have to say, I've mentioned this many times, and you get to a point you feel like you're just piling on. Or maybe you're not, because no one else seems to be picking up on this. It may just be me. God, do I hate Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. God, do I hate it. It is the most forced performance I have ever seen, and it just keeps getting worse. Now, before I jump into ripping it apart, let me say this. Two positive things about the portrayal of Harley Quinn in this film. First of all, I think this is the least fetishized she's ever been in one of these movies. This is the least kind of creepy, you know, weird, druggy sex doll, you know, Hot Topic kind of thing that she was in the original Suicide Squad, or even in Birds of Prey, that abomination from last year. Her main outfit in the beginning looks more like her costume from Arkham City. Which, tight leather, yes, but it's not as revealing, it's not as skimpy, it's no worse than kind of the other costumes that some of these people are wearing. And then she gets kind of this weird red prom dress that she wears through, but even that's not like hugging her form, she's not showing off her ass, it's not even that low cut. So it's the least fetishized, and I appreciate that because, you know, fetishizing Harley Quinn is just icky. And the fact that no one else kind of acknowledges how icky it is makes it even ickier to me, right? So that's good. I also have to say this film gives me at least one, for the first time, a genuinely good moment of Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. There's at least one really good moment. So she's captured by the bad guys, and of course she breaks out by herself because she's a badass, and she does one of those one person tearing through all of the, you know, bad guys in one swoop, you know, to show she's a badass, you know, with, you know, flowers flying out of her ass and cartoon birds. I don't know what the point of any of that was. I don't know if that's like supposed to be how she sees things when she's doing this or what. So I don't know what that was all about. But anyway, while she's doing that, the rest of the Suicide Squad is planning this mission to rescue her. And they're about to do it, and she goes, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And they said, "Well, we were coming to rescue you." And she gets this look on her face. You were coming to rescue me? Well, I can go back up, and you can still do it. I mean, it's just genuinely, it's the first time I felt like the character was genuine, and the goofiness was in the right place, and she felt like a real character in that moment. That one fucking moment. And the rest of it is just some of the worst acting and worst character portrayals I have ever seen. You know, nobody knows how to write for Harley Quinn. And they just have her do and say stupid shit going, this will be funny because it's just stupid and random. It's like, that doesn't make it funny. That doesn't make it work. And it also kind of hit me why I think her performance is really bugging me. Because basically, she's channeling Madonna. Seriously, go watch her performance in this, and then go watch Madonna in Who's That Girl or Desperately Seeking Susan. It's the same fucking performance. The bad Brooklyn accent, the manic pixie dream girl on crack kind of thing. It's the same fucking thing. Now, that in and of itself is not a bad thing. All right. Using a famous character with a very recognizable personality as the basis for your character is a time-honored tradition. Famously, Johnny Depp, you know, turned a Keith Richards impression into Captain Jack Sparrow. So, in and of itself, that's not a bad thing. But here's where the theory falls apart in this case. First of all, Margot Robbie is not Johnny Depp. And no matter what else you say about the man, and there's a lot we can say about Johnny Depp. I'm not excusing anything about Johnny Depp, but what you can say about him is he is one of the most gifted actors of his generation. That is fact. Sorry. And there's a difference between a good actor doing this and a bad actor doing this. And the second thing is, of all the people you want to imitate, why would you want to imitate the person who is widely considered one of the worst fucking movie stars of all fucking time? I mean, copying her mannerisms and things are fine, but going wholesale and I'm just going to do that, If you do not know how bad Madonna is, either go watch her movies or go watch Todd in the Shadows sub-series, Cinemadonna. He will explain this to you. And that is what's going on here. She's doing a bad Madonna impression, and she herself, I'm sorry, I have never liked Margot Robbie in any of the roles I've ever seen her in. So you got a bad actor doing a bad imitation of a worse actor. And yet somehow people are going, oh my God, it's so great. I don't get it. I don't fucking get it. Now again, I have to say I enjoyed the film a little bit more than I thought I was going to. It wasn't as big an abomination as I thought it was going to be. But this great, James Gunn redefines the superhero genre again? No. I have to believe that people going and seeing DC movies have the bar set so incredibly low, pardon me, that even the most minor victory feels like a revelation. Hence why people thought Aquaman was so good, or why the first Wonder Woman was so good. These were C pictures at best. But because they didn't completely shit the bed, like, the Man of Steel films, or Batman v Superman, or Justice League, we'll praise them because, it's the best we're gonna get. And I think that's the situation we're in here with the Suicide Squad. The best comparison I have for it is it's like a bag of generic candy that you would buy at the movie theater. There are bits of it that taste good, despite the fact that there is this unpleasant aftertaste that starts small and gets more and more intense the more you eat. And as you're eating, you're finding that it's giving you mild intestinal problems. And once it passes, the taste was still kind of good, but you kind of immediately forget about it. You don't even know the name of it a few days later until they bring out a second bag a few years later and you go, oh, hey, maybe I'll try that. So if this is your jam, if you love this film and you just had a great time because it was just kind of mindless fun, okay, fine and dandy, I can't blame you. But for me, it was average, and that's about it. Final grade, sorry, this thing keeps slipping. Final grade for The Suicide Squad is a C- for me. Which, again, it should be pretty proud of because it crawled its way up from being the worst film of the year to being a C- player. So, again, if this is your jam, go enjoy it. But for me, I've pretty much already forgotten a lot of the bigger points. So there you have it. Okay, so, never know how to wrap these things up. I'll just say we're going to wrap up. Thanks for watching, and as always, drive safe, and I'll see you at the movies.